Welcome everyone to episode 12 of What's That Sound podcast. My name's Stu Watts, and today I talk with Riverine, who is an engineer and producer out of Melbourne, Australia. We talk about how he relies on body language to know whether he's on the right track for a mix, clearing out mental space by using templates in a mix, as well as using different tools for different songs. For all that and more, stay tuned to this episode of What's That Sound podcast. You're listening to What's That Sound with your host, Stu Watts. Welcome everyone to another episode of What's That Sound. My name's Stu Watts, and today my guest is Riverine. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me, bro.
You're very welcome, man. For anyone that doesn't know who you are, can you give us a bit of a rundown about who you are and what you do in the music industry?
Of course, yeah. My name's Kieran. I go under the name of Riverine, and I am a mix engineer based in Melbourne. I also do music production, and I'm an artist and singer as well. And DJ, I guess. So I wear whatever hat I kind of need to get the job done.
I love it, man. That's awesome. Take us back to the start and then we'll get into what you currently do. But yeah, take us back to the early days of your life. Where did music come into play?
Well, I've actually got really cool parents. They're in a surf rock band in Brisbane called The Double Happiness.
Say the band name again?
The Double Happiness. They're really cool. Yeah, I guess I grew up around dad making beats and playing guitar. And when I was maybe 6 or 7, I started messing around on GarageBand. My first song was called Rodney Get That Cheese, about a rat. Very humble beginnings.
I think you need to bring that one back to a new song title.
Yeah, maybe like a hardstyle remix or something.
Yeah,
give it a new life. And then I picked up guitar at 13. Which then sort of moved into production and recording when I was 16. When I was 18, I went to uni to do psychology. And then when I was halfway through the year, I kind of realized I didn't want to wake up at 40 and have lived my entire life doing Plan B, which I'm sure a lot of people could relate to. So
yeah.
I dropped out and I put up a bunch of demos on SoundCloud thinking I'd be world famous the next day.
Yeah.
Alas, I wasn't. And then I spent the next few years recording people in hip hop and putting out like electronica demos of my own.
Awesome.
Then that moved into, I joined a pop duo called Kolu, which was me and my friend James. We did that for a couple of years. We toured Australia, and then it turned into his own solo project. We kind of disbanded for our own reasons.
Yeah.
And then early 2020, an artist called YNG Martyr put up a story looking for some guitar parts, and an artist I had been producing for a while called PRAX told him that I could help him out. And then that guitar part turned into an actual terrible song, but he asked if I could mix and master it, and that sort of turned into my first gigs as an engineer outside of just producing and mixing.
That's huge.
And so which was weird for me because he was my first ever mix client, and he was sitting on maybe 20 million streams at the time, which is now like 120 million.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's sort of just through referrals and hard work. The last 2.5 years have been full-time mixing and producing.
Yeah, that's sick, man. That's sick. Let's dive into that a bit deeper. First of all, who back when you were younger, like what music like made you get into making it yourself? What were you listening to?
I think when I was a kid, my parents were playing a lot of Pixies and Nirvana. But in terms of my own musical taste, I think what got me into playing guitar and learning how to play music was a bunch of really, really terrible screamo music. So I was into...
Hey, don't talk shit about screamo.
No, I'm still into it. But I mean like bad stuff. Like I was listening to Attack.
For some reason I knew that was the band that you were going to say.
Yeah. It kind of goes without saying. A Broken Side too. Yeah. Just all the worst.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, you can talk shit about that then. That's fine.
Definitely, Crunkcore deserves all the hate we can throw at it. Asking Alexandria as well, but I
Yeah.
kind of realized with all these drop D songs, it's so easy to play.
Mm,
I wasn't really that into learning just how to play a C chord or a
mm,
G, on guitar. It didn't really interest
yeah.
me, but when I
Yep.
found like songs that I could actually rock out to that I knew, I was a lot more into it. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, cool,
mostly
cool.
mostly grunge and hardcore, I think.
Yep. And so later when you started to kind of experiment with production and mixing and stuff like that, what were the influences there? Did you have any like producer idols or anything like that, or was it more still just like the music that you were listening to?
Yeah, I think moving into production, I was a huge I was a slut for Future Classic.
Okay. Okay.
I was big on them back in the day. I think like Taku, Chet Faker, Flume, Flight Facilities, Rufus. I was
Mm-hmm.
all over that stuff, and I
Mm-hmm.
think I googled, what software does Flume use, and Ableton came up, and then
Yeah, yeah.
slowly but surely got into Ableton. What about
Yeah,
you?
cool.
You're a Studio One head, aren't you?
Yeah, I am on Studio One. I love it. It's fantastic. They just released version 6, and yeah, it's got some pretty crazy additions. It's I don't know. It's just super flexible, very easy to use. I learnt about it when it was on version 2, and
Right.
it was just like it was all about the drop and drag back then, which like none of the other doors had. Like you drop and drag, presets, plugins, all that sort of. And yeah, and I was like, cool. I'm trying this out. Seems really easy, and they've just
Mm,
added heaps, 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 heaps more. So, man, I'm a big time fanboy for that shit, but it's sick.
sick. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of a. I never really hear of anyone using it, but it looks to me like kind of a hybrid between Ableton and Pro Tools. Do you think that'd be?
I think probably closer to more like Logic, Cubase, Pro Tools, with a lot of MIDI integration into
Mm,
it, but I'd say it's probably closer to Logic. But yeah, I mean, they're all blending into each other these days. It's kind of I think it's kind of like what you feel comfortable using is always the best way to go about it. And don't be discouraged to like try something new and see if it works for you, because you're always going to find new shit. There's always going to be new technology that comes out that you're like, I might give that a go.
yeah,
That's my
absolutely.
that's my thoughts on it. But yeah, sick man. So let's talk about some of the artists that you've been working with lately, and what. So you're mostly mixing and mastering. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, for the most part, I think obviously I started with production, but I think the skill set that people seem to um just I don't know, without me even trying, have gravitated to me for is mixing, which
Cool.
usually lends itself to co-production too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm kind of just like I said before, like whatever hat I need to wear to get the job done, I can wear it. I've been
Yep.
up to mix 7 or 8 on a song and then added strings or swapped out an 808 or whatever needs to be done.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool.
but yeah, I guess the last couple of years have seen me work a lot with YNG Martyr, who I mentioned before.
Yep.
That's been a really fascinating project to work on.
Mm.
There's a local act who doesn't have any music out yet, but she's incredible, called Aunt May. Have you heard of
Yeah,
her?
I know, Aunt May. Yep, and I've seen you guys working together. Yeah, she's crazy. We had a meeting, and Seamus, shout out to Seamus as well. He's a G.
Love
Yeah,
Seamus.
yeah, they're awesome people. So love it.
Yeah,
Keen to
love
hear
her.
that.
She,
Keen to hear that.
dude, it's insane.
Yeah.
I should flick you some of the tracks we're working
Ooh,
on.
yes,
It's
please.
it's like gothic,
Yeah.
trap, rap, operatic. One of the
Mm-hmm.
most creatively rewarding projects I've worked on. Um,
Unreal. Unreal.
yeah, there's also Kill Carter, local artist I've done a lot of
Yep.
work with. He's incredible. A bit of like
Yep.
emo, rap crossover stuff.
Yep.
Prax in a similar boat.
Yep.
Um,
Some really
yeah,
cool artists. I think listening through some of the work that you've done is it's very modern. Like there's no
yeah,
way, there's no two ways about it. It's a modern sound. But what I love is that you're not afraid to go crazy with shit, like especially on vocals, on 808s, on some of the synths. There's like hardcore distortion going on. There's crazy vocal effects. There's heaps of like throw delays. It's full on, but I love it. And was that always the intention for you when you were producing and mixing? Was it like, I just love fucking shit up, or was it because of the artist that you were working with more?
I think it's probably me. I've got to take some of the blame for that.
No,
It's
no blame.
very
Fucking, it's awesome, dude.
very likely my hardcore background.
Mm.
I think that's all I listened to as a teenager, and yeah, I guess hearing stuff so distorted, so slammed, so loud. I guess it's just bled into the work I do. Like when I hear a drop or a chorus, I want it to just like smack me in the face, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah, Decapitator gets a lot of work in my mix sessions for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, man. That Colossus song by YNG Martyr, that bass line in it, fuck me, that's hard.
Yeah, or Molasses, is that the one?
Molasses. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, yeah.
Molasses.
You're right. I was like, damn, did I
Yeah.
miss that one? Yeah, that was disgusting.
That's
Absolute
great. That's
putrid.
quality. That's sick. And so obviously the sounds that you're getting to me are different to those influences that you mentioned earlier in terms of, like Chet Faker and, all those sorts of guys, because that's more smooth. I mean, you definitely have smooth sounds on the production. But yeah, I just love that you're kind of bringing in your own flavor to it. I think that's really important for any producer out there to impart their sonics on any project that they work on, because it makes them stand out and it brings people to you. And I think that's really
Mm.
important.
Yeah, it kind
Um,
of imprints your taste and your brand onto the song, doesn't it?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So how often are you getting in sessions with people and being a part of, the tracking production side of things? Does that happen very often, or are you more on the back end?
I'd say it's probably a healthy blend. I do work with some artists in the scene quite regularly. I think Atten is this kind of disco retro artist who's really, it's a project that's really creatively rewarding to work on.
Cool.
And so we do everything together from conception to tracking to writing to mixing to mastering.
Unreal.
Um, yeah, so maybe it's kind of a healthy 50-50, I think.
Hmm.
What
Hmm.
about you on your end? Are you doing mostly production or tracking?
Bit of both, bit of everything. I'm kind of similar to you. I'm very much on the production side of things with a lot of artists, but then for some producers and stuff that I work with, I'm just doing the mixing and mastering. So yeah, it's a blend, but I would say more often than not, I'm doing the whole project. If
Mm,
if not mixing, but apart from that, I'm start to finish with a lot of artists, which is great, because you get to have that conception phase of things. It's like, let's figure out what this song is all about and how we want it to go and where we want it to end up. And obviously that takes some good communication and understanding what the client wants, and having a picture in your own head of being like, okay, well, this is how I feel like the project needs to go and where it needs to end up. What do you think? And then it's kind of like, obviously, coming to a middle ground for that, and everyone having their say equally, I think is really important for me as a producer. But yeah, man. Um,
mm,
let's talk about like what how you've built these relationships. I think it's I think it's something that people love to understand. Obviously, for people that are just starting out in the music industry, how have you built these relationships? Because you're working with a lot of people for a long term, and I think I'd love to
yeah.
unpack that.
Yeah, of course, man. Well, I guess two of the most long-standing relationships would be Kolu and Prax, which were before I was even getting paid to mix anyone's
Hmm.
stuff. They were the two projects I was working on. And it's so organic. Like with Kolu, James I've known since I was 15,
Yeah.
and we moved in together when I think we were 19. I'm 25 now. Um, and just from living together, we just started making music like that.
Sick.
PRAX, I had booked as a photographer
Hmm.
on Gumtree for one of my own music shoots. And
Cool.
then through knowing each other from that for about a year, he was like, "Hey man, I'd love to make music." And
Hmm.
so I kind of took him through his first ever demos. And then obviously PRAX put me through to YNG Martyr because he was connecting with heaps of people on Instagram. And
Sure.
then through knowing Seaton, YNG, he put me onto his friend Logan M, who he works with a bunch, who I did some mixing for, and then
Cool.
he put me onto Kill Carter, and
Yeah.
then through being involved with some of Kill Carter's live stuff, he put me onto Aunt May, and so on and so forth. You know, it's
Yeah.
super organic, super word of mouth.
Well, I love that. And I think it shows me that you're very open to kind of exploring new connections and kind of just going with the flow and seeing what comes of it. And obviously, there's slightly different styles across the board for all these different artists. And to be open to those sorts of processes and just being like, let's see what happens. It's always like a really fun collaboration to just try something new and, and see what comes of it. And
Mm,
yeah, that's awesome. Let's dive into your own music because you've got, a bunch of releases out. The most recent one, Be Mine. I love that song, dude. That's so sick. Like,
thank
man.
you,
The
man.
the I inboxed you as soon as I heard it and I was like, man, the guitar sound and the vocal, so clean. Tell
Thank
us
you, bro.
about your own project and how that differs from working with other artists.
Yeah, well, it's got to be the most fulfilling, I think, like doing everything in a project, you know, not just sort of seeing someone else's vision through to the end. You'd know this too, you know,
Mm,
you work on your own releases as well. Like, um, yeah, not just like I said, seeing someone else's vision through, but executing your own with your own skill set.
mhm.
With that song in particular, that was all done in one night. It was just one of those like lightning in a bottle things. Like
Yeah.
I think I'd had like just the worst day mentally,
Mm,
and I just needed to do something with that. I couldn't just sit there
mm,
and be all depressed. So yeah, I picked up a guitar. I wrote some melodies. Lyrics fell into place super easy. I mixed
mhm.
and mastered it and uploaded it like I think the next day.
So good.
Um,
I
yeah.
think there's
So
something to say about that. Like there's confidence behind that. It's like
yeah.
I think a lot of people, I mean, you would know this and working with so many different artists is just the amount of times you hear people say, "Oh, I've got to do this before I can do that," or I can just let me it's not ready yet or this it's like I honestly tell all of my artists is like there's always the next song, and I
Mm.
think that is a really important mindset to have. Like, they can't all be the best song you've ever written. And some of them are going to be. That's the point to me, is that like if you hold yourself back from keeping moving and release stuff and put stuff out and move on to the next thing, you potentially will stop yourself from writing the best song you've ever written.
Yeah, there's something to that, isn't there? Like when I know I need to get a release out, when I know it's been a while, and I've sort of like emptied the clip, so to say, like I've put all my
Mm.
best stuff out, I feel more inclined to write. Whereas
Hmm.
if I'm sitting on like 8 great songs and I'm like, oh yeah, when they're right, when the mix is dialed in, there's
Yeah.
not really any like urge for me to get any more music done. So you're
Yeah.
right. And there's I think you touched on a couple things too. There's also like where people get tripped up is like this scarcity mindset that like this
Hmm.
song I wrote is this like precious perfect thing that I need to execute perfectly and hold on
Yep.
to. And um you often find, at least in my experience, the kinds of people that say, "Oh, when this, then I'll do that." I rarely see that thing ever coming out. Usually, it gets
Yeah.
put on the shelf for so long and perfected for so long that by the time it's perfect, they're over it. They're not excited,
Yeah.
and it never comes out.
And everyone else has moved on as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
So
like,
I think what's beautiful about the digital age is it allows us to shortcut the time between idea and excitement and then being able to share that with the world.
Yeah, 100%. I think like excitement's such a good word to use. And I think that um, I think more people like should rely on their gut instinct and excitement as a factor, as a major factor to what they're actually working on at the time, and listening to yourself and being like, am I having fun here? Because at the end of the day, we make music because it's an enjoyable thing to do. For most people, I would say 99% of people, like it's a enjoyable thing. So if you're not listening to yourself when something's telling you, okay, this isn't right, or or the opposite side, I'm loving this. This is awesome. Everyone has to hear this. Put it out as soon as possible. Don't hold on to something and perfect it, because at the end of the day, there's no such thing as perfection. There's
Yeah,
just not. And
you just
what's
got to let
perfect
go.
in, yeah, what's perfect in your ears is not perfect in someone else's ears.
It's a
Um,
paradox. Hey,
oh yeah. Um, Sick, man. I'm loving this. I'm loving this, but I want to unpack more like specific production type things. Do you have like a favorite like element to work on in a production? Is it vocals? Is it drums? Like what makes you go, yeah, this is sick?
um, this might sound kind of woo woo, but I'm really big on more than any specific element. I'm really big on body language, like paying attention to like the way a piece of music feels in my body. Like if the chorus doesn't
Mm.
like knock me, like
Yeah.
I need to change something. You know, when that kick hits, if I'm not like obliterated, like something needs to change. Like if that bridge comes around and I don't feel like that intimacy, or there's like not enough atmosphere in the song, like I need to change something. So for
Mm.
me, I don't know, like I love working on getting the bass right. I love drums, like getting a good drum
Mm.
sound. I love intricate vocal detail, and like I go to town on my sends. Like some of my vocal sends are
Yeah.
like 9 plugins. It's a guitar amp going into a chorus, going into a delay, going into a
Yep.
compressor, all of that stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, my biggest thing is just like, how does this feel? Because
Mm.
even if a song gets sent to me and I'm not, going crazy about it when I hear it, usually by the end of the first pass, like I'm probably a little bit in love with the song, just based
Yeah.
on trying to fit it into loving it as best I can.
Yeah. What are some of the difficulties then that you find when you're working on something?
Something that I'm really big on, just because I write as well, is there's a quote from Fleetwood Mac's album Rumors is like widely considered one of the best engineered albums of all time.
Yep.
And the engineers, I think it was it Ken Calais or someone that worked
Not
on that.
sure. Not
But
sure.
when they were tracking and producing that, they basically had the ethos that any element of the music that's in the same pocket as anything else in terms of sharing any of the same notes just needs to go.
Mm.
So for me, when I get songs, something I struggle with more than anything is when, let's say, like the main melody or sample is in the same pocket as the vocal.
Mm.
I hate that.
Mm.
Um,
Yep.
like I just wish sometimes I wish I could just throw the sample down an octave or something,
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
get it
yeah.
out of the way.
And do you
Because
ever
there's
do something like that where you like just just do it and see what the artist says, or
I have to very varied results.
yeah. Yep. Yep.
I have been praised for it and absolutely crucified for it. So I
Mhm.
think it's just it's down to a conversation with the artist, like, hey, this is in the same pot, and sometimes that just doesn't work either. And
Mm.
so usually I've just got to like cut 2.5K by like 10 dB just
Yep.
to,
Yeah,
because
make
I
some
hate I
room
hate
for it.
hearing something, and like as any human being, like your ear immediately goes to the vocal, and if
Mhm.
something's kind of even just subtly competing for that same pocket of your attention, usually around those
Mm.
high mids,
Mhm.
um, I just hate it.
Yeah.
Something in my brain just, yeah, can't
Yeah.
deal. Do you
Yeah,
find the
it's hu
same?
it's I mean, the hardest thing for me in that regard is probably blending distorted guitars with vocals. A lot of I work on a
Yep.
lot of like harder rock stuff, punk stuff, and that's where the difficulty lies. Especially, I've got some Yamaha HS8s now, but like for the first couple of years that I was here at these studios, I was working on the Atom A7Xs, and
Yep.
they're really harsh around the 3K to 5K area. They just like present it so clearly. And so that's a good thing for, detail and vocals and, being able to address those problems. But when vocals and like the clarity of vocals and distorted guitars sit in that same space, that can be really difficult because as soon as you take out either in the vocal area or in the distorted guitar area, you lose so much energy.
I know.
So
Presence
yeah,
too.
it's a similar sort of thing, man.
Did you find you were probably, because of the speakers, overcompensating? Like, were you listening back to your mixes and they were way too dull
Not
in that area?
in all honesty, it was kind of the opposite just because of me trying to get something to poke through. I would generally, and it was always the distorted guitars. I would always just listen back on a different playback system, and I'd be like, fuck, those guitars are way too harsh or loud or whatever it is. So, but obviously with time you start to learn your system and your speakers in the room and everything like that, and you address those problems in future mixes, and you start to understand kind of where those things are going to happen. And it's not always even in the mix. You just like, it's okay if you like bounce out a mix and you're like, I'm not happy with this. I think early on I struggled a lot with that, being like, it has to be right for the first bounce. I'm just going to
Mm.
keep working on it for hours and hours and get it right before the first bounce. Like, how about you just get it to the point where you think it's pretty close, then do a first bounce and then listen, in car and headphones, and then be like, okay, some adjustments need to be made because they probably will anyway.
Yeah, and I think like you could spend an extra 6 hours getting it perfect for the first bounce, and everything you thought was getting you closer to perfection was getting you further away from the artist's idea of perfection.
Yeah.
So it's probably, I like that ethos, just print it
Mm.
and see what you think, see what the artist thinks, and then go from there.
Yeah, because there's always going to be, unless you did nail it, in which case that's good too. But there's always going to be
Yeah.
something that like one of you notices in the mix that has to be addressed anyway. And sometimes it might not be even the thing that you're focusing on, like you said.
Mm.
Um, let's um, let's dive into workflow type things. How have you over time refined your processes?
Um, I think getting a template together first of all was a big change for me. Not in terms
Mhm.
of any kind of vocal chains or whatever, but more just layout and bussing.
Mhm.
Um, in Ableton, there's a lot of grouping you can do, and I started out. Are you aware of Ableton's layout?
Yeah, I work on it. I've got a friend who I work with who produces in it, and then we sit together and look through the tracks, export them, etc. Yeah.
Okay, true. Well, I used to just have groups on groups on groups, and my
Mhm.
sessions just got so messy.
Mm.
So a couple years ago, I decided to just have this layout, and I'm sort of bussing a lot closer to what people do in Pro Tools.
Mhm.
So I'll have like a bus for all my bass elements, then melody, drums, effects, lead
Yeah.
vocals, backing vocals, instrumental bus for all of the instruments, and then
Mhm.
vocals all bus, and then sends separately.
Yeah.
Um, so literally just doing that for clarity of mind saved me so much mental headache. And then when you go to printing
Mm.
stems and grouping things, it's a walk in the park. Um,
Yeah, I think like you said about it just giving you that mental space, it means that you don't have to search for things. You don't have to be like, where the hell is this going? You know every single time that the synth's going to be in that bus or whatever.
yeah,
The
and
vocal's going to
color
be
coding
there.
too
Yeah.
helps a ton.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yep. What about you're talking about templates, effects change. Do you like to use them frequently, or is it different every single time you're working on a mix?
I've played with this on and off, like having the same sends just
Mhm.
default. for mixes, and I don't know. I kind of like to I used to have kind of my basic one is like a slap delay, doubler, parallel vocal with a bit of distortion on it. A quarter note delay, send, eighth note delay, just general, and maybe like a plate and then a long haul reverb.
Yep.
And I kind of like the idea of I got this from Alangelo, who does a lot of the weekends stuff.
Yep.
Dude, you go on Mix
Yeah.
with the Masters and look at his sessions. They are
Yeah.
cooked. His lead vocal track is probably 80 plugins. It's insane. And like he doesn't think of things in terms of like, this is my reverb send, this is my delay send. Like
Yeah.
this is just a new send, and that send could be comprised of 6 different plugins. So
Yeah.
I don't always do that, but I prefer to discover it. Song
Well,
to song.
I think there's a complexity in it, which leads to interesting results every single time. But there's also, I think what you said about mental space is really sticking out to me. And it's like, it just means that you're just going with it more. You're not really going, I have to do this way. And then it's like, oh, if it doesn't sound right, how do I troubleshoot? It's like going with the flow. Like mixing is it's kind of like playing an instrument in a way, in like some abstract way. It's like I've watched Chris Lord Alge talk about he uses his mixing console as a musical instrument, and I think when you're mixing, it's a similar thing. You're like choosing different colors, you're choosing different sounds. The plugins inform somewhat of how everything's going to sound, but it's also how you use it. It's like it's so complex. But I think my point is that you are freeing your brain up to just go with the flow and be really open to, going on a journey with the music. And that's fucking cool as.
Completely. Yeah. It's listening and responding. It's not just this kind of like factory line of get it good enough and send it off,
Hey, thanks so much for listening so far. There is plenty more to come, so don't go anywhere. I just wanted to let you know that this podcast is made completely independently by myself with no sponsors. So if you like what you hear and you would like to show your support, you can send a donation to the PayPal link, paypal.me/whatsthatsound. The link is also in the show notes. Thanks so much for your support, and let's get back to it. Want to apologize. I realize I got this song title wrong for Be More, not Be Mine. I am shit as with names. I forget people's names all the time. So
that's
apologies.
So fine, man. I wasn't gonna check you on it. I don't mind at all. That's fine.
Sick. Well, on that note, let's get into the nerdy side of things. If people have been listening to this podcast, they know I like to get nerdy about plugins and hardware. But let's begin with hardware. For your favorite types of hardware, go.
I'm a complete minimalist, to be honest. My favorite hardware is an SM7B and a UAD Arrow with the Avalon preamp.
Cool. Yep. 737 or
737.
Yeah. That's what I got here as well.
You got the actual outboard, don't you?
Yeah, we do. Yes. Yeah. It's very nice as a preamp. It's very crystal clear. Can be a bit harsh at times because we use a TLM 103.
So you've already got crazy top end on that.
Yeah. So it can be a bit harsh, but it's very nice on certain vocalists. But otherwise, I'm just going straight into the desk. But yeah, nice. Hectic. So that's good. I love the minimalist approach. I think it's these days, honestly, like gear sounds so good for cheap. It's not actually cheap sounding anymore. So that's sick. So that's your go-to every single time for your vocals.
In the past year I've used that and the Warm Audio U47 clone.
Cool.
That's a really cool mic. I've had some issues with it lately. It's been shooting out weird noises, like room noise sounding. Right. This just sounds like wind coming through it. But
yeah, right.
Yeah, dude, I'm super minimal. I've got UAD. I've got the UAD Spark subscription. I've got Plugin Alliance, Slate. I've got so many of these incredible companies that we've got such good access to. Like, even just being able to load up, like Lexicon reverbs in Ableton now, and very true SSL emulations. I think,
Mhm.
yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see where the next sort of 20 years go in terms of plugins versus hardware.
It's crazy. It's like it just blows my mind is like how good can things get? And they're just going to obviously keep coming up with stuff, but emulations back even when I started mixing, which was like 2011-ish,
Yeah.
it was like shit didn't sound that good. It's like Waves was the cream of the crop, and now, in my opinion, Waves is like on the bottom of the barrel, more so. Not at the
Shots
bottom, not right at
fired.
the bottom,
Let's go,
but
Stu.
it's like it's not. It can't compete with Slate or UAD.
Or
I mean, it
Fab
just
Filter,
Fab
Sound
Filter.
Toys.
Yep.
Like, it's
Yeah.
it's it's so interesting too, seeing all these new AI products come out as
Mm.
well. Like, have you ever used Golfos?
Oh yeah, I've got Golfos. It's strange. It's probably one of my uh I don't want to say regrets, but it was expensive.
Yeah,
And I
how much
don't
is it?
I
It's like 300?
yeah, 300 something. Yeah. And I bought it last Black Friday and I've used it probably 5 or 6 times. It does a couple of good things really well, but I wish I had bought Soothe instead.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to cop
Mm,
Soothe as well.
mm, mm.
Have you ever used there's a kind of cheaper version of it, I think Baby Audio do.
Right.
Have you ever
Haven't
used
used it.
that?
No, not
Yeah,
yet.
I think Trey, who's another local mix
Yep.
engineer, AO Trey,
Yep.
also one of my best friends. He copped it because it was like $30,
Hmm.
and he said it's the worst thing he's ever
Yeah, right.
used. So
Yeah,
I don't know what
I
it is
find
in
with
that
those like
algorithm.
noise suppressor type things is I want to understand more like what they're doing, because to
Mm,
me it's like I want to know how to control things, and I want to know that if I need a specific plugin for a purpose, I know that it'll work, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
Like you get to learn EQs and compressors and you're like, cool, I know that this, 1073 EQ is going to do a specific thing or whatever it might be. For those sorts of noise suppressor type things like Goldfuss, it's like I don't know exactly what it does, and it doesn't work the same way every time I use it. So I find it hard to go back to it.
yeah. Some plugins kind of scare me like that when you don't really understand everything under the hood. I often use what is it? The DSM V3.
Yep.
It's called a prismatic compressor, meaning it's got like 40,000 different little points that it can
Yeah. Right.
multi-band compress basically, and
Yep.
that's really nice in parallel, but it also scares me because I'm like, I don't actually know everything that this is doing.
Yeah.
I might be ruining something somewhere, so
Yeah. Yeah.
um yeah,
Yeah.
I try to stick to as simple plugins as I can.
Yeah. Nice. And I think one more thing on that is I find that I'm doing more broad stroke type mixing these days anyway. Like, obviously you need to get pinpoint with some EQing and getting rid of certain frequencies here and there. But once that's done, I'm like, I'm being broad with shit. I just find the character in certain EQs or compressors gives it the life and sound that I'm after anyway. And um, so yeah, that's just my 2 cents on that. But tell me about some of your favorite. Let's start with EQs, software wise, if you're in the box.
Yeah, I use the Plugin Alliance Brainworks SSL E strip on every channel
Love it.
always. And to your point you just made, I think the difference between, maybe some of my trashier mixes a few years ago versus my mixes now is it is closer to broad strokes, and it is more analog strips. Just as much as a technical thing as it is psychological. I think if if you pull up a parametric EQ and I can see everything that's going on,
Hmm.
whether I'm lying to myself or not, I probably am relying on my eyes at least a little bit.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, I love a good E strip. I probably use Sound Toys Devil Lock on every mix, always,
Cool.
forever. Um, I use it after delays often, just to like bring
Mm-hmm.
up the sort of saturation and the decay tail. I
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
love slamming it on drums in
Mm-hmm.
parallel.
Cool.
Um, yeah, I don't Lexicon, the is it the 480L
Yep.
reverb?
Yep.
Magic. That's a recent love of mine. I was
Yeah.
using the Slate Verb Suite
Mm-hmm.
with the Bricasti M7
Yep. Yep.
presets before that, but yeah, this reverb's just magic.
Mm.
What
Yeah,
about
I
you,
might
man?
need
What are
to might
your
need to look into it.
what are
Uh,
your go-tos?
I think it's so dependent on the project. But and I recently turned off my Slate subscription because I wanted to try Plugin Alliance and I didn't want to have them both going at once because I had purchased a few Plugin Alliance like the E channel,
Yeah.
and that is fantastic. I love the J though on vocals because of the clarity of the top end. I think the E is more dirtier and grittier and sounds good
Mm.
on rock music, but for pristine poppier vocals, the J is beautiful. I love it. And the AMEC channel is awesome too.
That
I don't know what the
AMEC
hell
one's
that does, but that's
crazy.
crazy.
That's a
Yeah.
big boy too. That's an
It's yeah.
enormous plugin. Takes
Yeah,
up half your screen.
yeah. That's one problem that I have with the Plugin Alliance plugins. The channels is they're not user friendly in UI wise.
Yeah, they're very
Yeah.
intimidating, a lot of them.
Mm.
Took me a
But yeah,
while to learn
once
them.
you understand it, I think it's pretty sweet. But yeah,
Yeah, that AMEC plugin has a really good clipper on it too. I think the compressor can turn into a clipper.
cool.
And on drums, that sounds like magic.
Love it.
On the
Love
topic
it.
of
Love it.
favorite plugins too, standard clip I use on
Mm-hmm.
everything
Yep.
always. Do
Yep.
you mess around with
Yep.
that?
I haven't yet. I haven't found that much of a need for clippers. Um, there's just my brain just doesn't go to it yet, and it's probably just because I haven't played around with them as much. I'm not against it, just have never really found a need for it at this
Come to the
stage.
dark
But
side. Come to the
I'll give
dark
yeah,
side.
I'll give it a crack. If
Yeah, they're
I
so good
should just
on
spend
drums.
an hour or two researching it and playing around with it.
Go hard. It's like
Um,
$20 too, I think, the plugin.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, beautiful. Let's I want to understand to you. This is a really hard question, but what does a good mix sound like or a good production even? Like what does that mean to you?
Yeah, to me, because that varies so much across the board. Like I can listen to like a washed out shoegazy grunge mix that is maybe has a worst clarity ever and it can feel amazing. And then I can
Yep.
listen to like a record by The Weeknd that has the most that Serban or someone has mixed and it's got the most pristine, immaculate clarity ever. And in
Hmm.
my books, that can be just as good. I think to me, it comes back to body language at the end of the day. Like, how
Yeah.
does this feel? Like,
Hmm.
do I just want to crank this to 11 and just lie back and just soak in this audio? Like, um, yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess that comes down to good composition, like that Fleetwood Mac point I had before,
Hmm.
low end clarity, um, the perfect relationship between presence and not being harsh,
Hmm.
um, and things not competing with each other.
Yeah.
However, that ends up being.
I love that, and I think it's really important the point about the production elements and making sure the arrangement's great because at the end of the day, you can stack heaps of shit on top of each other, and it's totally fine. It can work in a lot of situations, but chances are you're only hearing two or three of the things anyway. And unless it's like a big wall of sound type deal where that's the intention, generally speaking, space and clarity and having things hit at certain times and stuff like that to me is way more important and will provide the emotional impact more more easily, I think.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, less clutter. Yeah.
Mm. But definitely there's times for it. Like there's an artist that I work with, Ben Witkowski, and we make He does like post rock, like his influences range from like Coldplay to Sigur Rós to just like bizarre, noisy things. And our productions get heavy, like there's string arrangements, there's distorted guitars, there's heaps of drum tracks. It's like, it's crazy. There's heaps going on, and it works so well for that because it's just, it builds and builds and builds. But yeah, in a lot of types of music, especially pop related productions, I think less is more, in my opinion.
I agree. And pop is this fascinating thing to learn because you might have 130 stems for a project, but you're only ever really hearing the drums, the bass, and a vocal at any given time. So it's all just it's all these little magic moments of it's this dance between repetition and excitement.
Yeah, I think Ian Kirkpatrick is the best example of that at the moment. Like
the future nostalgia, that Dua Lipa album is ridiculous. Ridiculous, man.
Yeah, dude. I love it. I love it. Let's start to like tie things up. And I always like to finish things off by getting your advice for, first of all, producers and engineers, and then artists. I think it's going to be cool because you tie both of these lines, which will be an interesting perspective.
Yeah, I think for me, something that has probably attributed greatly to where I am now, like having lived off of music for 2.5 years, which is anyone's dream, is just integrity. How you hold yourself as a person when you're communicating with these people that you're working with or people that support your music. When you're working on a record with someone, you're in the room together. I think, integrity is a big one, like playing the long game, like fighting for the right idea for the song, creating with the right intentions and not just pure commercial drive or fear of being too outside of the box that it's not commercial enough. Because I've seen that in sessions. And I think that over however many years you're in music, if you continue to stack these bricks or songs or whatever and little experiences and interactions with people, and you've left a good impression and you've created with great intent to the best of your ability, over time people notice, and then that forms the foundation of your career in time.
So good, man. Really well put. I love that. Thank you for joining me today, man. First of all, where can people find you?
So if you want to keep up with my music, my artistic output, I'm just at Riverine Music on Instagram and TikTok. And super simple, my engineering work is Riverine Audio it's all just one word, on Instagram and TikTok as well.
Beautiful.
But yeah, thank you, man. Thanks for having me on. This has been a pleasure.
Very welcome. Yeah, it's been awesome, man. Any like final words before we head off today?
Stu Watts is the GOAT.
That's
it.
Well, thanks again, man. Well, thanks everyone for checking this out. If you could do us a favor and share it to your friends, share it on your socials. That's the best way that we can get this word out there. And make sure you're following or subscribing on the platform that you are listening or watching this on. Thank you all again. Really appreciate your time. And we will see you next time on What's That Sound podcast. Thanks for listening to What's That Sound. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe on your podcast platform to stay up to date with each new episode. We'll catch you next time.